Washington DC is quite interesting because when I first started getting this a year ago, we saw quite a so-called US style where the weekend use dominates, and we mainly use it for leisure, but it's now changed to a European style weekday commuter pattern. And sure enough, just like Europe, we have regular commuter peaks. Minneapolis is another one which is not, it's perhaps a lesser bold one, in fact it's not used so much by commuters. But quite interestingly, you can cycle for a good 10 miles between the two cities, using bike share. And New York's going to get a very big one. This is just a mock-up based on the initial data they've released, but I would say it's inspired quite heavily like London in terms of its shape, its density, and its overall size. Then there's a few tourist-oriented ones in the USA, Miami Beach, Long Beach, very, very popular with tourists. Mexico City targets just one part of the city, the affluent neighbourhood, but that sees similar usage to the European ones, where again you have peaks in the morning and the evening. And this, interestingly enough, is the most popular one in the world for its size at the moment. You can cycle along the Copacabana Beach in Rio, and it sees up to 70% of bikes being used at once, which is way higher than pretty much every other system. Over to China, they have this Hangzhou one is shown at 50% of the scale simply because it's so huge, and unfortunately the data doesn't update, so you can't show the temporal change, but you can at least get a sense of just how big this system is. It really dwarfs pretty much every other ski in the world. Here's a more normal Chinese one where we can get peak hours. And it's interesting to note there's 11 hours between the morning and evening peaks. You see them 7 days a week as well, so Chinese work ethic really jumps out. Right to show there. So this is a classification that we've come up with based on looking at that spatial temporal data. The two commuter peaks is the dominant pattern that we tend to see in many of the bike shares, but you do see somewhere it's mainly weekend usage. Sometimes you get a mix. You only get Spanish-style ones where you see a lunchtime peak as well, and then you get other systems like Girona where there's no pattern at all because of the different size of the town. So just very quickly, that's the docking station data. But I'm going to touch on the journey data, which we talked about in detail in the paper. And this is interesting because here you can see, we can at least assume the routes that people took based on the origin and destination information. And you can potentially identify communities from that as well. This is a flow map which we've produced with some of the London data. So the idea is the thicker the line, the more of the bike share bikes are likely to go along a particular route. And this is a map that James produced based on that last information, but here he's combined it with air pollution data. So potentially, fat red lines are where lots of cyclists are undergoing large amounts of pollution. And in London, the main hotspot seems to be around Waterloo Bridge here, which is a pretty nasty junction. But this is a very big road, Euston Road, where we don't really see many cyclists going on at all, we believe, because there's better cycle pollution just to the south of it. It's more likely that those cyclists would use those bike lanes rather than going on a big road. In the case of Waterloo, they have no choice. Here's a graph showing what we believe, based on likely routes that cyclists take. This is the variation of the average distance within the hour of the day and days of the week. So you see that the average distance people go in lunchtime is short, so people just popping out during a weekday lunch to do short errands. And the peak rises during the commuter times, and at weekends it's pretty constant. Again, there's lots of assumptions in the distance. It's based on the fact that we assume such as going to go a sensible route, and that's not the case, of course. And this is how the average speed changes. So again, the speed drops down quite a lot at lunch. It dips up again when it drops during the rush hour because cyclists are somewhat affected by the heavy traffic during rush hour in London as well. And then overnight, you get the fastest speed of all, where of course there's very little traffic on the roads. So it's a nice little sort of bonus at the end of my presentation. There's a tradition in UCL CASA presentations to always include Google Earth somewhere, because it's just such a cool thing, even if it has sometimes debates for academic merit. But what I basically did is I took my bike share data.
No techno music this time either.
No, techno. Yes, no. Music presentations, not sure about that. But anyway, this is a Google Earth plugin. So it's the same website as all those other maps that take a screenshot for. It's a new feature just built, so it's got a few bugs. But basically it allows you to fly around the city and see the same patterns, and see where the docking stations are, see where the full ones are, and see where the empty ones are. If we zoom in a little bit, here's a shot of London, the city of London actually. You see all the skyscrapers. This is after the evening rush hour, and the blue indicates docking stations where there are no bikes. So if you're still working at this piece, you see the time up there. I was working quite late in the presentation. 20 past 11 at night, if I worked in the city, came out and wanted to share a bike, I would be out of luck to basically have to walk to the station because there's just no bikes available. And the operator in London really struggles to get those bikes back to where people want them. And that's Hangzhou, that huge system covering the entire city. There's no bikes down here because there are trees. But interestingly enough, there is a bike docking station there, which is in the middle of the lake. And I think it's a rather exciting one. I presume it's mainly for tourist use. So it's kind of interesting they've got one there. So yes, all of these maps can be found at bikes.o'brien.com. That's my contact details there and James' contact details. And there's a photograph of a friend on one of the Veleb bikes in Paris who basically borrowed the bikes for a day and went to visit various tourist attractions. That's one of the great things with these systems. You can go to a foreign city, hire a bike and just cycle it out. Thanks.
Questions for Oliver or James?